So, hello everyone to the third episode of Casual Convos with Haider. This is Mshari, as you guys know. Today's topic has been a suggestion by one of our viewers, and it was a good suggestion. Um, it relates to the topics of self-care, whether that's selfish or not, and how that relates to setting boundaries. So let's kick things off with you, Haider. How do you feel, generally speaking, about self-care, and especially how people think that that can be a selfish thing?
Okay. I think this topic actually relates really well with our previous discussion, which was about the nature of morality. And the topic of selfishness comes up a lot in terms of morality and how we define it. Yeah, stroking the beard, you noticed. That's why I'm growing my beard.
So how's it?
Hey. In terms of, there's an ethical question that we have about what's the right thing to do. And because we've been taught for a long time that being selfish is a bad thing, we include self-care with that. So anything that we do for ourselves, even like the pursuit of happiness, some people can think that it's bad to seek your own happiness if you're not seeking the happiness of others, or you're not helping others achieve happiness, then that's a bad thing. So it strongly impacts self-care because we tie it to this idea of selfishness. And I actually got influenced a lot by the writings of a philosopher called Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is not, she's like a very controversial figure. A lot of people hate her because she promotes capitalism, and she promotes like individualism and selfishness. Like she has a book called The Virtue of Selfishness.
Whoa.
So it attacks a lot of the conventional wisdom that relates to morality. But I think it's added.
Can you give me the name of this author again?
It's Ayn Rand. A-Y-N.
A-Y-N.
And then Rand.
Rand. Okay. Thanks. I'm definitely gonna check this author out. Looks really interesting.
Yeah. So
really interesting.
The virtue of selfishness. When I read it, I was actually a religious extremist, and I used to think that being selfless is the best moral pursuit. So I would like deny my personal self-care. I went through like an eating disorder, and I went through a sleeping disorder as a result of that. Like I felt like I had to neglect myself in order to prove that I'm being good, you know? Mm-hmm. So she added a bit of balance. I think she swings in the opposite extreme, which is why like my initial exposure to Ayn Rand, I was like, this lady is the Antichrist, you know? That's how bad, that's my impression of her at the time.
That's really interesting. That's actually making me want to read the book even more.
He has a lot of interesting views. The thing is, like, I believe it's important to be exposed to multiple perspectives. Like, at the time I read, she has a book about capitalism. I forgot what it was called. Capitalism, the New Ideal or the Moral Ideal. One second. The Unknown Ideal.
The Unknown Ideal. Interesting.
Yeah. Now we don't really understand capitalism, and like she tries to kind of explain what makes capitalism a moral system, you know? And again, not something we associate with capitalism. Usually capitalism is about exploitation. Again, like exposing yourself to multiple perspectives helps you enrich your approach or attitude to any topic, and you get to see it on multiple layers. You don't just judge by a single opinion or from a single angle. You get to see it from different angles.
So you mentioned a bit about the experiences you had in the past. what would you say to somebody who's currently neglecting themselves, thinking that that's a good thing, who genuinely believe that that's a good thing?
Okay, so I like to consider it from two angles. One is why do you matter as a person? Like, because a lot of people jump to my second point, which is by taking care of yourself, you're actually you're in a better position to take care of others. Okay, but I don't believe that you need to justify it by saying that it allows you to take care of others, or it gives you more energy to take care of others. That's a really great angle to it. But also taking care of yourself matters because you matter, you know? Like, you don't need to justify it on how it's going to impact other people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important for us to develop that perspective that we deserve our own attention. We deserve our own care. And if nobody pays attention to us, if nobody cares about us, we still care about ourselves. Okay, and that's not it's not selfish, because the selfishness is not just about self-care. I think it's about exploiting others for your own interests. I think that's the dimension of, well, that's when selfishness becomes dangerous, when you feel like you're entitled to other people's effort, you're entitled to other people's attention. Like the term, I don't like using the term selfish because it can be like misinterpreted. I usually use self-obsessed, like actually like this obsession, or like a hawas in that, like everyone needs it's all about me, you know. But
Yeah.
for other people, like, you know, okay, you need to take care of yourself, but it doesn't mean that other people, like, you're not at the center of their universe, you know.
Right. I completely get that. So actually, you mentioned something just now, and I actually found a couple of quotes online, and like in the article, they introduced these lines as cliches, as all-time cliches, which is funny because I never came across them myself. Would have been helpful if I did. But the first one goes, take care of yourself first, or you will have nothing left to give others.
Yeah.
The second one is along the same lines, just much more concise. It says, we can't give what we don't have. And now these have been really helpful when I read them, but I also support exactly what you said, that using the fact that when you take care of yourself, you can help others more effectively, using that as a reason to justify taking care of yourself is not really the best oomph that you go for. It's not really the best motivator to
Yeah.
go for.
I think it's an important dimension, but it's not the only dimension. It's not that you need to take care of yourself in order to take care of others. Because, you know, like sometimes we go through phases in our lives. Let's say like a person who's not is not surrounded by loved ones, or they don't have relationships, yani, like mutual relationships. Maybe especially in this pandemic, like if somebody is lonely and did not have the opportunity to interact with others, it's very easy to go down a negative spiral where you think I'm of no significance, or I'm not contributing to the lives of others. So what? You know, like you still matter. Even if you don't contribute to the lives of others, you still matter, you know? And then, but then when you build that, like my personal approach to personal development, or self-care, self-help, whatever it may be, I believe we should come from a place of wholeness, like where you love yourself and you kind of accept where you are, and then you build on top of that. One of my favorite quotes is, be yourself, only better, you know? So it begins from a sense of acceptance, and then you can seek improvement.
Interesting. I think though, Lenny, a big challenge, a really big difficulty that people who generally don't value themselves and generally don't take care of themselves, you know, the whole package of neglect, a big difficulty they have is that they don't fully, they don't see or understand what makes them valuable unless if it's justified by their ability to serve others and help others. And the way I see it is that they're seeing themselves as an extension of someone else, and that extension is the only thing that validates their existence, which is a really dark way of seeing it. But I've seen this over and over again. This is generally the most difficult thing about um, about making it a part of their life, a part of their lives, to actually value their own experience and how they feel. That becomes something that seems unjustifiable in their eyes, which is a big difficulty that they have.
Yes. The thing is, it's a prevalent cultural perspective. Like, you look in any direction and you'll notice people criticizing being selfish. And by the way, with my children, I usually don't tell them you're being selfish. I tell them you're being inconsiderate. So pursue what you want, okay? But if it hurts others, you need to find a way that, like, you need to find a way to pursue your happiness, but not at the expense of others, or not by neglecting, especially those that around you. Like, there needs to be a sense of cooperation or mutual care. So you don't feel like, no, I need anything that I do, I need to do it just for myself. And I think we mentioned that in the last convo about the balloons. Like, when you seek your own happiness, when you help others seek their happiness, it's an opportunity for you to experience happiness as well. So I don't believe there's a dichotomy, or the pursuit of your happiness is mutually exclusive to the pursuit of helping others find happiness. There's a huge overlap between them, but you don't need to justify it through the overlap. Not, I'm taking care of myself so that I can help others, by having more energy or more time, attention, whatever.
Right. So one thing you mentioned a few minutes ago, there's actually been, like, in the back of my head while I was researching, like reading some articles about this, which is about especially about the word selfish and everything that surrounds it. So the word selfish is universally hated, and it can very easily be used as a weapon to attack someone else's moral character. And it's impossible to justify being selfish. But it seems to me at this point that that, let's say, appropriate selfishness is the best response to this confusion, and that seeing selfishness as something that's not purely bad and wrong and evil, but seeing it as, when it's used inappropriately, it becomes a bad thing. But it can be used appropriately, and that can be a good thing. So I'm thinking now, an example is, let's say you live alone and you have a job, and so you work in the morning, but then you spend your time at night at home doing whatever you want. Being selfish at work, when you're working with other people, when your job is about serving your customers, that's bad. That's selfishness. That's bad. You don't want to be selfish in that situation, because it's actually a bad trait. But being selfish when you're at home, using your time for yourself, that's like a context in which selfishness is not only justified, it's actually preferred.
Okay, so can we go back to the example of the like working with your customers? Can you just like describe what selfishness would look like in that situation?
A good example is usually at work, that selfishness is still confined in the rules of the work itself, of the job that the employee does. But in a case like that, when it's just, when let's say the employee finds himself in a situation where a customer might need some help with something, but the employee is not obligated by law to provide them that help, they wouldn't do that help, even if it's a
Okay.
small thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think this is an excellent example to sort of unpack the idea of selfishness. So if by selfish we mean uh, you're pursuing your self-interest, okay, helping customers, helping others in general will make you happy. Like seeing other people happy as a result of something you did typically makes people happy. Okay, so turning down opportunities to help others is actually not in your self-interest because you'll deprive yourself of this opportunity to be happy. The other point is when you help others within a work environment, it actually increases your professional opportunities because then the customers would feel happy working with you. They might ask to work like they would ask for you by name. There are opportunities to get promoted. If you're the owner of a business and people enjoy dealing with you, then you're getting more business opportunities. So being good towards other people does have a dimension of being like it is in your self-interest to help others and to be kind to them and to be supportive as much as you can, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, this is absolutely true. This is absolutely true, but people would still be doing that, you know. And a lot of the times, from my personal experience, this employee doesn't see how helping that person in the moment can be good for them.
Yeah,
And the thing about making someone else happy or can make you happy, that's something that only really works if you accept it, if you embrace it, if you want to make that person happy. It's not something that can be forced onto you if you make someone else happy,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. I don't think you can coerce people into being good. Uh, but also, I think we need to make a distinction between uh, like short-term gains and long-term gains because some people, because like a perfect example is on the road. A lot of people don't want to let someone in front of them because they feel they're going to get delayed. Okay, but this creates a toxic environment on the road where like nobody wants anyone else coming in front of them, and like there's a lot of ego involved, like how dare you come in front of me, you know? But that toxicity creates like you get upset, you get frustrated, you get angry by the way others are behaving, and at the same time, it does create congestion or like delays because people are kind of competing on the road. But if you allow people to go in front of you and like you take an easier approach, that's like it's more of long term a more long-term outlook, and maybe that's the distinction we need to take into consideration as well. Like, are you thinking about just the short term, or right now, how do you feel and how what you want to do, or in general, what kind of culture do you want to create, uh, like along the whole street, the whole road? What kind of environment do you want to cultivate? That kind of thing.
Interesting. Um, okay, so that kind of addresses the selfishness with with respect to interacting with other people. But how do you feel that relates to selfishness with yourself in the house? Specifically, the way I'm thinking of selfishness in that context is that the person who's how do you say, like, compulsively selfless, someone who's neurotically selfless, let's say, where it's not really that they're choosing to be selfless, but they feel that that's the only way that validates their existence. Someone like that can be, like, again, compulsively selfless even when they're alone, because they're thinking of how they conduct themselves in their private time and how that relates to everyone else and how everyone else feels about them. And so they're not spending their time the way that they like, but they're kind of spending their time the way that they feel they should, or they feel that is expected of them. And so something like that still, I think, still counts as selflessness, even though it doesn't make it, it's not really self, it's kind of compulsive in a way.
Yeah,
So how do you feel about that? That's what I'm saying.
So maybe it's self-denial or self-neglect, but as a result of these cultural values that make selfishness seem bad. Like even the pursuit of someone's own happiness or pleasure, like you want to play video games and you think in the back of your mind, I'm being irresponsible and I'm being selfish because I should be doing something that's more productive or helping others improve their lives. And one thing I didn't mention, like I think I probably mentioned it in the last discussion that we had, which is when you don't, when you feel obligated to make others happy and you neglect your own happiness, it means you make others feel guilty as well in experiencing happiness. So if happiness was a gift and you're giving it to someone, receiving it will feel selfish. So they would not want to receive it, or if they do receive it, they feel guilty about receiving it. So being selfish, or not being selfish, embracing the idea that your happiness matters means you allow other people to experience happiness without guilt. And I think that is very important as a culture, but we just need to acknowledge that culturally there's a value, there's an idea about happiness or about the morality of selfishness that we need to abandon, which is the idea that if you actually Immanuel Kant had this idea, like if you do a good thing for the sake of others, that's being moral. If you do a good thing, it's something considered good, but out of self-interest, it's considered amoral. Like we're not going to consider it moral aslan. Like it's out of the moral sort of framework, because you're deriving happiness or you're deriving benefit out of it.
Interesting.
So that's the kind of idea that we need to challenge.
Interesting. I really like that. I really like that. So actually, along the way, in like reading into this topic a bit more, I found an article that is titled "Why Not Taking Care of Yourself is Selfish," and this article is a really well written article. So I just wanted to mention that article is going to be linked in the description if anybody's interested. But it's written by this woman who is a therapist, and the name of the blog is called Scary Mommy. And in the article, she kind of refers to herself as the mother of everyone else because she's taking care of everyone other than herself. And so the article just talks a bit more about that and why not taking care of yourself is a selfish thing. And she puts it in a really good perspective. So I'd recommend you guys would take a look at that, and you, Haider, as well. It's an interesting read.
Yeah, I'm actually curious. How does she define selfishness? Because if she considers not taking care of yourself as being selfish, that means there's like a definition of selfishness that it's not the same definition we're using.
Well, I don't remember exactly what she wrote about it, but I got the impression, again, I don't want to speak on behalf of the article, but I got the impression that because of what you think, because of how you perceive your acts in the moment, they're selfish because they're what you want. It's something along those lines. Even though it's something that's for other people, it's still what you want yourself. But she puts it in a much better way, so we can take a look at that.
No, it sounds interesting.
Okay, so I also want to get your input on boundaries, but but there's a quote here. I think is a good. It works both on self-care and boundaries in general. It's by E. Cummings. I actually don't know who that is, but that's what it says. The quote is, "It takes courage to grow up and become who you really are." And from my personal experience, I can say that just by being yourself, that takes a lot of courage. Just by seeing how you feel, for maybe it takes courage, especially if you're not the kind of person who lives that way. Who, if you're the kind of person who I just refer to as compulsively selfless, it does take a lot of courage even to ask how you feel. So if somebody's afraid of that, that's part of the game. It takes courage to wake yourself out of this way of living. It's not really easy. I guess it gets easy once you like get out of it. It becomes easy to continue in this way of living. But in the beginning, it's a tough thing to do.
No, but I think it's excellent because it just shows how pervasive that idea about selfishness is, and coming from society. Like there's a certain demand, cultural demand, that you kind of you must serve others, or you must do what's good for others at your expense. We kind of glorify this idea, and so sometimes it becomes hard to justify the pursuit of your individual happiness, or your, like, what's of benefit to you.
Yeah, I mean that's why it seems to me that the whole problem just stems from everyone being so pressured to serve someone else. Like person A pressures person B, so that person B gives person A what person A wants, you know? And it's that pressure all the time that creates this issue that's pervasive in our culture.
No, which is funny because those who complain about others being selfish are being selfish because they're demanding others not to be selfish. Like,
yes, exactly.
why
Yes.
do you get to choose the movie? You're being selfish. Let's go with my movie. Like, what?
See, that's the root of this confusion. That's how this doesn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah.
That's how this is so confusing, because it at the bottom line, it makes no sense, you know?
Mm.
All right, so how do you any any like like a point of taking action with respect to this whole world of self-care, selflessness, and selfishness? What's like at the center of all this is setting boundaries with other people. And for anyone who has this issue with their life, setting boundaries is something that's like it's always an issue every single day. It's something that's always an issue, and it's usually something that they hide from because it's such an issue that they don't know how to respond to.
Mm.
So there's people who think that taking care of themselves is selfish. By extension, there's people who also think that setting some healthy boundaries with other people is extremely selfish. How do you feel about that, and what can you say? You had some really interesting things to say about people who think self-care is selfish. So what do you have to say about them as well?
Okay. No, so I think setting boundaries is your ability to identify what works best for you, and then again, like when you respect your own boundaries, you allow, or you give space for others to set their own boundaries. And like human relationships, they're a matter of cooperation, or like we're trying to work together for mutual benefit. So we need to create that space where we actually respect and allow people to pursue their happiness, because it enables that kind of culture where everyone, like people feel justified, or feel good or it's healthy to take care of themselves. Okay, and like I said, it's not that you're taking care of yourself at other people's expense. It's because you will function better. You will experience greater joy in life when you take care of yourself, and at the same time when you um, uh, helping others is also part of your self-care and self-interest, because helping others will get you to experience joy. Now, when it comes to setting boundaries, I think it's important to, there are so many things that we do for others or with others. And like anyone who has a job is providing a service for other people. Like jobs don't exist out of a social context. Like if there are no other human beings, you can't have a job.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
You can't have business. You can't even have politics, because politics is about people. Like an individual cannot have a political system, you know? So there is, the way I like to see it is that I have certain ambitions that right now involve other people, or their commitments I've already made to other people, whether it's partners, customers, and so on. But I also try to tap into this ambitions that I've not pursued, but I personally care about, even though they're not something I've made a commitment to any other person. So content creation is something I'm really passionate about, and I want to pursue, but you know, no one's really asking me to do it. I believe it will be beneficial to others. There will be customers or readers or viewers, whatever it may be. There is an audience for it, but I want to pursue it because it's something that I care about and brings me joy without having an existing commitment, you know? So the way I set my boundaries is, okay, what commitments have I already made? Are they worth continuing, or do I actually want to apologize and pull myself out of those commitments? And balance those with things that I want to pursue, but they're not a thing yet. Like I've not actually got them off the ground for me to feel like they're contributing positively in my life. Like I care about them, but they need to, I need to work at them to actually make them feel like they matter, you know?
Interesting. Wow, interesting. You put together a lot of different stuff just now, I think.
Sorry, I don't have all my ideas. There you go.
But you put this into perspective. I wasn't seeing it as, I was seeing it more like, I was seeing it from the perspective of how boundaries set limitations, but you saw it as a way of creating opportunities, which is the opposite side, the other side of the coin of boundaries, which is while they do set limitations in some ways, they open up doors in other ways. It's really fascinating.
So my presentation for the Coded Hackathon was about the power of constraints as a positive thing. Like it was called Think Inside the Box. And I truly believe in, like, when I think about constraints or boundaries, I set them not to limit, but to allow things to flourish. So if I split my time between days where I have meetings and days where I work on my own content or pursue my own projects, it means that when I'm working with other people, they have my full attention, because I know that my ambitions have their own time. And when I'm working on my ambitions, those ambitions have my full attention because I've given other people their time, you know? So setting boundaries, and it can apply to so many things. So for example, if you allocate times to check your email and not check email in times after that or beyond those times, that is a limitation. You're setting boundaries, but it allows you to focus more when you're checking your emails and to not be distracted by email beyond those times. So those boundaries or those limitations actually help help provide better results, you know?
Interesting. Actually, you just made me realize how the productivity system I came up with, the reason it worked was because I was setting boundaries with myself all the time. And that's what made me able to focus on one thing at a time. That's what made it work in the first place. I didn't really think of it that way, but that's really interesting. And I'm thinking that, but by extensions, let's say when you're trying to set boundaries with a friend or a coworker or somebody else, yani, um, and so this actually relates to a couple of quotes I got off the article by Psych Central that I wrote. So I'm gonna read them out right now. The first one goes, boundaries tell others how you want to be treated, what's okay and what's not okay. Boundaries protect you from being mistreated. Second one is pretty much the same thing, or along the same lines of boundaries should never be an attempt to control or punish others. They're actually a form of self-care. And so it's the part that says that they're not an attempt to control or punish others. I think what you were saying just now is that, I mean, an extension of that would be that setting boundaries with someone else, ideally, if done right, of course, it can be done wrong and can be done in a damaging way, but if done right, it works to benefit both parties, right?
Yes, definitely.
Well, how about the situations that, and this is a situation I personally face more often than not, which is that I'm seeing a problem with a certain type of pattern of interaction. And I'm seeing, oh, if we set this kind of boundary, it would be benefit to both of us significantly. And so let's say I attempt to establish that boundary, and how you attempt to establish a boundary is its own little thing. It's not a big deal, though. You can do it by heart, that you can just intuit your way. But if you're having trouble with that, there's a thing that you can learn in. But when I attempt to do that, I just realized, so I usually get, actually, I just realized this is what the article said, which is actually some tips to help with setting boundaries. And I just remember that one of them is the thing I was just going to say, which is that the tip says expect resistance. And I realized that's what I was going to say, that I usually get resistance. So the thing is, I usually get resistance as if, so I get the feeling that this boundary I'm setting is the worst thing I can do in the world. It's the wrong thing to do, that I'm hurting someone else. So how do you, what advice do you have for someone in a situation like that, where the other person just doesn't see it as a good thing? It makes it harder to continue doing that boundary.
Yeah, I definitely believe with any misconception that people may have, it's important to have a conversation and to get people to buy into the idea. So if boundaries are considered limitations, or sometimes they can cause inconvenience, like if somebody wants to get your opinion on something and then you say, I don't take phone calls, you know, and like in the afternoon, I don't take any phone calls. It may inconvenience others, but they just have to work around your boundaries, and you'll probably settle on something that allows you to work at your best and is okay, like for others in terms of communicating with you. If they can't reach you at the right time, maybe leave you voice notes or whatever other approach that they can take. But just because there's something is of like a convenience to others doesn't mean it must inconvenience you. You know, like you're not at the mercy of pleasing others to the extent of taking care of what's convenient to them and neglecting what's convenient for you, you know? And I really like this idea of, like they say, when you receive an email that says urgent, ask yourself, who is it urgent for? You know? Yeah, we just need to be aware of that. And again, like once you establish your own boundaries and like self-care, like you prioritize that in your life, you give others the space to do the same.
All right, so I'm seeing here two main themes that run through all of this. The first one, which came from what you contributed, the other one was my thought. The first one was that this whole thing of self-care, uh, it's called self-care, but it's actually, in a way, by extension, it's something that benefits everyone. It doesn't just benefit you. And in some ways, and I think this is the first thing that happens to people, is that you taking care of yourself inspires those around you to take care of themselves too, to value themselves more if they don't do that already. And from my personal experience, what got me into thinking that I don't take care of myself is by seeing others take care of themselves. And that inspired me to think, wow, I'm actually not taking good care of myself. This person has really got themselves together, and I don't even sleep well at night. It's interesting. And so
Yeah.
seeing someone else is what kind of kickstarted me to consider self-care as a thing in life, you know?
Yeah. No, that's really good. Like I have to admit, yeah, like confess that I personally still suffer from like self-sabotaging behaviors. So, for example, I resort a lot to emotional eating. Like when I'm stressed out or something, I resort to that. This is not being selfish. It's not self-care. It's self-sabotage. But the reason why we resort to it is, again, going back to the idea of short-term and long-term. Like the long-term, or like the mindful approach would be to listen to your emotions, acknowledge them, and then find a way to actually address the stress in a positive way. So sleeping better actually helps tackle the stress, or eating healthy uh, helps you improve your mood. But in the moment, you feel like, no, I really want junk food because this is going to make me so happy, you know. But and like with many things, setting boundaries, self-care, living a balanced life, I think it's important to have a good understanding of them. But then there's a skill that we need to improve. So yeah, it requires practice and like setbacks and then trying again.
Interesting. The other thing that runs through all of this is, and actually, this is mostly on self-care, but I actually saw it also in setting boundaries, which is just starting to see yourself as someone of intrinsic value, starting to see your own experience as as worth improving. Just because it's your experience, it doesn't have to be of service to someone else's experience or some other external thing. And that's central to setting boundaries, healthy boundaries, and taking care of yourself, and the whole shebang that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That seeing yourself as worth caring for.
Yes. I think self-love and self-acceptance is the foundation of all good things in life. And like I experienced this late 2019, where like I felt very fragile, or like vulnerable, because I felt like I was being neglected by loved ones, or like I wasn't getting the love in the way that I wanted. And so like I felt this kind of disconnect, or like I didn't feel high self-worth. But then I realized like I don't need to rely on others to show me love for me to show myself love. And I don't need to define how other people need to show me love. Like, okay, we can have a conversation about it, but I can't make demands on others. So when I made that realization, I did feel much more at peace. And like for the past, I used to get like very irritated very quickly. And like since then, maybe it's been 6 months or 7 months, 7 or 8 months, where like I feel at peace. Like even when something upsets me, I don't feel like lashing out, or I don't feel like I'm dependent on other people or how they behave. So, and that I experienced because the foundation is self-love, like, and not relying on others for me to value myself. I don't need other people's attention. I don't need their love. It's not that I dismiss it. It's just that I am not dependent on it. It's a
So
bonus.
it's a really powerful thing. Yeah, definitely. I'm waking up to this reality too, that self-love is it's a really, really big deal. It's really central to so many aspects of life. It isn't just about how you think about yourself and your private thoughts. It really does have its roots in just everything else in your life. It really does go everywhere. It's a really important thing. And I think also that it's absolutely at the heart of self-care and setting healthy boundaries, and also by extension serving others, and by extension further than that doing business. And it it does go everywhere else too, I think. Yeah.
And I think we'll end it at that, so
Yeah.
we don't pass the 1 hour mark.
I think this
Based
is
on someone else's demand. The topic was suggested by someone, and then the time is someone else.
All right.
Okay.
So this was a good topic that we mentioned. So thanks to the person who suggested this topic. And if anybody else who's watching has any suggestions of topics they'd like us to talk about, please put them in the comments. We'd love to hear them out. Thank you, Haider, for your time and for everything else that you contributed.
Thank you very much. Speak to you soon.